Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the mechanical innovations and absolute strategic genius behind one of the most significant race cars ever built, the 1911 Marmon Wasp. This is the machine that completely conquered the inaugural Indianapolis 500. But the story of that historic victory? It's much more than just a simple tale of raw speed. We're talking about a literal masterclass in aerodynamics, data-driven strategy, and some incredibly brilliant on-the-fly problem-solving.
To really understand the sheer confidence behind this machine, we have to look at its driver and lead engineer, Ray Harroun. Now, you might be familiar with NFL Hall of Fame quarterback Joe Namath, right? He famously and brashly guaranteed that his upstart New York Jets were gonna win Super Bowl III. Well, decades before that, Ray Harroun made a very similar, absolutely bold prediction. He guaranteed he would win the very first Indianapolis 500. And when people asked him why he was so confident, he just pointed to his yellow and black Marmon Wasp and simply said, "A car that is built right is in better condition the second year than it is the first." He actually chose his year-old car over a dozen brand-new machines simply because he knew for a fact it was battle-tested and all the bugs had already been worked out.
And because the Marmon Wasp won that inaugural Indy 500, there's this really common myth that it was designed specifically for that single race. But actually, that's entirely false. In fact, this machine was developed a year and a half prior. We're talking at least 8 months before the Indy 500 was even announced in September of 1910. The Nordic and Marmon Company originally built and campaigned the car at pioneering races all around the country just to promote their passenger autos and really show off their engineering prowess.
So while the car wasn't built for the Indy 500 event itself, it was absolutely engineered with the brand new Indianapolis Motor Speedway in mind. By December of 1909, this massive track had been freshly paved with 3.2 million bricks. 3.2 million? That's exactly how it earned the famous nickname, the Brickyard. This was literally state-of-the-art paving for its day. The goal was to create a safer track, but also one that allowed for the blazing speed needed to build a reputation as America's fastest speedway. Marmon knew they needed a car that could effortlessly slip through the air and handle that unprecedented speed.
Now, the roots of this engineering marvel actually stretch back decades. The parent company, Nordic Marmon & Company, was founded way back in 1851. And get this, they originally manufactured flour milling equipment. By 1902, they started branching out into experimental automobiles, starting with air-cooled V-twin engines. They really quickly gained a reputation for building reliable, speedy, upscale cars. Then in 1909, they introduced the Model 32 passenger car, and it was exactly from the foundation of that Model 32 that in early 1910, Ray Harroun began supervising the design of a special race car, the custom-built streamlined machine that would ultimately become the legendary Wasp.
So, proving Harroun's point that the car was completely battle-tested, the Wasp had already lived a pretty perilous early life. In May 1910, it won its very first wheel-to-wheel race at a 2-mile dirt track down in Atlanta. Later that same month, on May 28th, Harroun actually drove it to victory in the 200-mile Wheeler-Shebler Trophy race right there at the Speedway. But guys, just 2 days later, disaster almost struck. During a morning practice on May 30th, 1910, a Michelin tire blew out. Harroun took a harrowing ride, literally teetering on the third turn retaining wall. Thankfully, he was uninjured, but the car? It appeared to be total junk. Company officials actually considered just scrapping the whole thing. Fortunately, they reconsidered, managed to repair it within a few weeks, and exactly 1 year later, on May 30th, 1911, it secured that legendary Indianapolis 500 victory.
Okay, so how exactly did Harroun pull off this historic win? Because let me tell you, this victory was absolutely not a fluke. It was the result of a brilliant, 3-point strategic master plan. He combined a revolutionary approach to aerodynamics, a super clever on-the-fly innovation for safety, and a highly disciplined, data-driven strategy to preserve his equipment. Let's really break down each of these 3 pillars. The first pillar of their strategy was the monoposto, or single-seater layout. Now, typically, racing rules or just the general conventions of the time required a 2-person layout. You'd have 1 person to drive and a riding mechanic in the passenger seat whose whole job was just to watch for approaching traffic. But Harroun, who, by the way, was notably an airplane pilot as well as an engineer, he understood the critical importance of wind resistance decades before wind tunnels were even a common thing. So he just decided to completely shed the weight of that second rider. He gave the Wasp a narrow, fuselage-like body with a sharp, pointed tail. To anyone watching, it literally looked like an arrow slipping right through the atmosphere.
But here's the catch. Removing the riding mechanic created a massive safety hazard. Without them, how do you watch your back? Well, Harroun's improvised solution was nothing short of ingenious. He took a mirror and mounted it on struts right ahead of his steering wheel. This simple fix allowed him to monitor the approaching traffic all on his own. And because of this brilliant piece of problem-solving, the 1911 Marmon Wasp is widely believed to be among the very first cars to ever utilize a rearview mirror. Talk about a real game-changer.
And that brings us to the third pillar, tire preservation. Think about it, a 500-mile race on a notoriously brutal brick surface. That was an absolute nightmare for rubber, but Harroun utilized a highly disciplined, data-driven pacing strategy. Rather than just driving flat out the whole time, he maintained a steady, calculated speed specifically to minimize his pit stops. The result of that patience? The Marmon Wasp required only 4 tire changes during the entire race. The runner-up? A staggering 14 times. That incredible efficiency in the pits is absolutely what sealed the victory. Now, what adds an almost cinematic layer to this whole history is the man behind the wheel. You really have to ask, how did a retired driver in a single-seat car overcome a massive 40-car field? Yeah, you heard that right. Ray Harroun had actually already retired from racing. At that point, he was working purely as an engineer for Marmon. But when it came time for the inaugural Indianapolis 500, he decided to come out of retirement to drive the Wasp for this one single high-stakes race.
And the statistics from that day show just sheer, undeniable dominance. Going up against a sprawling, pretty chaotic field of 40 cars, Harroun started way back in the 28th position. But thanks to that steady pacing and the unparalleled aerodynamics we talked about, he just carved right through the pack. He led 88 of the 200 total laps and maintained an average speed of 74.6 miles per hour over the whole 500 miles. That was an absolute engineering marvel for 1911. And for his historic efforts, he took home the first-place winnings of $14,250.
Now, if you're wondering where this magnificent piece of engineering is today, I have good news. It survived. The original yellow and black Marmon Wasp has actually never been fully restored, meaning it's never undergone one of those pristine concours restorations. Instead, it remains in mostly unrestored original condition. It sits as a permanent fixture at the Indianapolis Motor Speed Museum, serving as a raw, tangible piece of automotive history that you can still go and see for yourself today. As for the company that built it, the Marmon Motor Car Company continued to produce elegant luxury vehicles for a while. They even pioneered an all-aluminum V16 engine, but they ultimately couldn't survive the economic devastation of the Great Depression, and they ceased auto production in 1933. However, that wasn't the end of the story. The company pivoted. They started manufacturing trucks and all-wheel drive vehicles under the name Marmon Harrington. Over the decades, it evolved, was acquired, and today, the Marmon legacy lives on within Marmon Holdings. We're talking about a massive $12 billion modern conglomerate that still champions that original spirit of engineering excellence.
So the 1911 Marmon Wasp really proves that the racetrack has always been the ultimate laboratory for innovation. From the rearview mirror to lightweight aerodynamics, Harroun's solutions for a 500-mile race fundamentally changed how we design cars today. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to ponder. What other everyday automotive technologies sitting on our driveways right now trace their roots directly back to early innovators chasing speed on the bricks?